Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. Today, we're going to be going through some excerpts from the Quran, specifically chapter 51, which is called The Spreaders.
Very cool.
And I thought it was interesting how this chapter is structured. Like, we start out with all this imagery invoking like these natural phenomena.
Yeah.
And then it kind of transitions into warnings about Judgment Day and the consequences for disbelievers. And then we move into these stories of prophets encountering people who disbelieve. And it wraps up by talking about God's power and the purpose of creation.
It's a really fascinating chapter.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that struck me is just how it begins.
Okay.
You know, like it doesn't open with some commandment, but instead it opens with wind.
Oh, that's interesting.
With phrases like spreaders spreading or carrying loads or moving gently.
Oh, wow.
It's almost like God is setting the stage with this really powerful force.
Yeah, that's a great point.
That is invisible.
It definitely creates this sense of anticipation and scale.
Yeah.
And knowing the Quran, I have a feeling that there's got to be some deeper meaning behind these metaphors, right?
Absolutely. I mean, wind appears throughout the Quran.
Okay.
And it really is this powerful symbol of God's mercy and wrath.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like, think of it this way. You can have a gentle breeze carrying blessings, or you can have this devastating storm bringing punishment.
Yeah.
So from the very beginning, this chapter is setting the stage for both of these aspects of God's power, this awe-inspiring and this fearsome aspect.
So we've got this anticipation, we've got these forces at play.
Yes.
But then the chapter kind of shifts gears pretty quickly.
It does.
And we get these very direct warnings about Judgment Day. And the consequences for disbelievers.
And I think the intensity of these warnings really underscores just how central this concept of Tawheed is to Islam.
And just as a reminder for our listeners, Tawheed means
oneness of God.
Right.
And so rejecting this core belief is seen as the ultimate sin.
Oh, wow.
And so chapter 51 is really emphasizing this by having you imagine the disbelievers as like tasting their ordeal.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's not simply about this physical pain.
Okay.
But it's about experiencing the full weight of their separation from God.
So it's this spiritual taste of what it means to exist without acknowledging his oneness.
Exactly.
Wow. That's
it's powerful.
That's a powerful way to put it.
Yeah.
So we've got this ultimate consequence of disbelief.
Right.
Is eternal separation from God.
Yeah.
But the chapter doesn't stop there.
No, it doesn't.
It goes on to highlight the rewards for the pious.
Yes.
And it contrasts the fate of the disbelievers with these vivid descriptions of like gardens and springs.
Absolutely. And I think what's interesting is it's not just like believe and you'll be rewarded.
Right.
But it really outlines specific traits of the pious that emphasizes actions alongside belief.
So it's not just what's in your heart. It's
how you live your life. Right. So things like limiting sleep so you can engage in prayer.
Wow.
Seeking forgiveness at dawn.
Okay.
Sharing wealth with the needy.
So it's about integrating your faith into every aspect of your life.
It's not just believing in God intellectually, but actually living it out.
And that's where I think the verses about recognizing God's signs come in.
Yes.
Because the Quran encourages you to look both within yourself, but also at the world around you for these signs.
Yes. And it uses this word fitra, which refers to this innate disposition towards recognizing God.
So it's this built-in compass, almost.
Yeah, like a built-in compass that is present in all humans.
This idea of fitra really intrigues me.
Yeah.
Can you kind of unpack that a little bit further for me?
Sure.
Like, what does it actually look like to have this built-in compass guiding you towards God?
I think it's about tapping into that inherent sense of wonder and awe.
That we all experience when we're confronted with the vastness and complexity of creation. You know, that sense of knowing that there's something greater than ourselves.
Right.
So I'm curious for you, what are some experiences that you've had in your own life that have made you feel this innate connection to something bigger? Have you ever felt a built-in compass guiding you towards certain truths?
That's a great question. I think, you know, everyone has those moments where they sense a deeper meaning or purpose, whether it's through nature or art or relationships, or even just like quiet reflection. There are those moments where you feel like there's something more.
And those moments are like invitations to connect with that fitra, to nurture that innate understanding of God.
So we're seeing how chapter 51 encourages a recognition of God, both within ourselves and in the world around us. But then the chapter dives into a specific story, the story of Abraham.
Which is interesting here because of Sarah's reaction. When she hears about this news, that she's going to have a son.
Right.
And she's described as like a barren old woman. And her response is one of disbelief and despair.
And this detail, I think, is so powerful. Because it really highlights God's power to grant children even in these seemingly impossible situations.
Right, because she's
beyond childbearing years. She's barren.
And this theme recurs throughout the Quran.
It does.
You know, we see it with the stories of Zechariah and Mary.
Exactly.
It's like God's power isn't bound by human perception or understanding.
Absolutely.
So it's this reminder that nothing is impossible with God.
Yes.
But this theme of God's power isn't limited to just these stories of childbirth.
Right.
The chapter goes on to describe the destruction of these entire nations.
It does.
Like the people of Lot, Pharaoh Ad, and Thamud.
All very powerful civilizations that were ultimately destroyed.
For their defiance of God.
Exactly. And these accounts directly parallel those earlier warnings about Judgment Day. Emphasizing the consequences of disbelief.
It's not just an empty threat.
No.
It's like, this is what happened.
This is what happened.
These people.
They're not presented to scare people into submission. But to make it clear that choices have repercussions.
Right.
It makes you think about what kind of legacy
that's a great point.
we're building with our actions.
I like that.
That's really
good. So it's this reminder that our actions have weight.
Yes.
Both in this life and in the next.
Absolutely. And it brings us back to that imagery of the wind and the movement.
At the beginning?
That opens the chapter. Just as wind can be this force for both creation and destruction, so too can our choices shape our individual and collective realities.
So we've got this imagery.
Yes.
We've got these stark warnings. And ultimately this really powerful message about the impact of our choices. But what is the purpose of our existence?
That's the big question.
That's the big question.
And chapter 51 addresses this pretty directly by stating that God created jinn and humans for the sole purpose of worshiping him.
And this idea of worship being more than just rituals really intrigues me. Can you unpack that a little bit further? What does it actually look like to live a life that's aligned with God's will?
That's a profound question. And I think this chapter provides some really insightful answers. You know, while worship often brings to mind like rituals, in Islam, it encompasses a much broader understanding. It's about embodying God's attributes in every aspect of your life. So your thoughts, your words, your actions.
So would you say it's more about aligning your entire being with God's will?
Aligning your entire being with God's will.
But isn't that a really high bar?
Like, how can someone realistically live with that level of intentionality in every single moment?
It's definitely a lifelong journey. And no one is expected to be perfect. But you know the stories of the prophets in the Quran, like Abraham, I think they offer us guidance and inspiration. They exemplify these qualities like hospitality, generosity, unwavering faith, even in the face of challenges.
Like Abraham's willingness to sacrifice his son.
Yes.
That's often cited as the ultimate test of faith.
Exactly. That story is such a powerful illustration of submitting to God's will. Even when it's really difficult to comprehend. But chapter 51 doesn't just focus on these grand gestures. It also emphasizes the importance of those everyday acts of piety. Like we discussed earlier, limiting sleep for prayer, seeking forgiveness at dawn, sharing your wealth with those in need.
So it's about those small, consistent actions, those daily choices that reflect this deeper commitment to God. Precisely. And that brings us back to this concept of fitra. That innate disposition towards God. Remember those moments we talked about where you feel connected to something greater than yourself? So by cultivating that awareness, you can start to make choices that are more aligned with your fitra.
So it's almost like those everyday actions become a way of nurturing that connection. Of strengthening that inner compass.
Strengthening that inner compass, exactly.
But what about those stories of the nations that were destroyed.
Yeah.
Because those feel pretty heavy.
They do.
And some might even say that they're meant to instill fear.
Yeah.
Like, what's the takeaway there?
It's not about fear-mongering.
Okay.
It's about understanding the weight of our choices.
Okay.
These stories are presented alongside those warnings about Judgment Day.
Yeah.
Not to scare people into submission,
okay,
but to emphasize that actions have consequences,
okay,
both in this life and the next.
Right.
They serve as these cautionary tales, reminding us that rejecting God's message and persisting in wrongdoing will inevitably lead to destruction.
So it's a call to accountability.
Yes.
Both individually and collectively.
Exactly.
They make you consider the long-term impact of our choices.
Absolutely.
Not just on ourselves, but on the world around us.
Right. And that's where this idea of leaving a legacy comes in.
Okay.
We're not just wandering aimlessly through life.
Right.
We're actively shaping our own destinies and contributing to a larger narrative.
I like that.
Through our choices.
Okay, so we've got this idea of worship as a way of life, the importance of cultivating our fitra, and this powerful reminder that our choices have far-reaching consequences.
Absolutely.
But chapter 51 doesn't end there.
No, it doesn't.
It concludes with a reflection on the very purpose of creation.
Right, and this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
The final verses state that God didn't create humans and jinn for any other reason than to worship him.
But remember, worship encompasses so much more than just rituals.
Right, we've been unpacking that all along.
So what does it actually mean to live a life that fulfills this ultimate purpose?
Yeah.
We're back for the final part of our deep dives into chapter 51 of the Quran, The Spreaders.
Okay.
And, we've been unpacking some really profound ideas about the nature of God,
right?
The purpose of creation, the importance of living a life aligned with our fitra.
It's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
It really has.
And I think what's remarkable about this chapter is that it manages to weave together all of these grand theological concepts with this very practical guidance on how to live a meaningful life.
Right, like how to put it into practice.
Exactly.
So as we kind of wrap up our exploration here, what stands out to you as the most transformative aspect of chapter 51? What's that one idea that you think has the power to really shift the way we think and live?
I think for me, it's this emphasis on personal responsibility. Chapter 51 constantly reminds us that we're accountable for our actions both in this world and the next.
Yeah.
It's not about blindly following rules,
right,
but it's about making these conscious choices that reflect our understanding of God's will and our commitment to living in accordance with our fitra.
So it's about moving beyond a purely intellectual understanding of faith. And actually embodying it.
Embodying it in our daily lives.
In our daily lives, right.
Exactly.
It's not just something you think about.
It's not just in your head, it's how you live.
Exactly.
It's recognizing that our choices have consequences, not just for ourselves, but for the world around us.
Right.
It's about understanding that even the smallest actions can have this ripple effect, contributing to either a more just and compassionate world or to a world filled with suffering and injustice.
So it makes you stop and think about the kind of legacy that you're creating.
Yes, what kind of legacy are you creating?
With your choices.
Through your actions.
Yeah, and it highlights the power that we each have to shape our destinies.
Absolutely.
And contribute to a larger narrative.
We all have this incredible power.
So this chapter calls on us to be mindful. Intentional.
To be intentional.
And always strive to align our actions with our highest values.
With our highest values.
But let's be honest. It's not always easy to stay focused.
It's not.
On those higher values.
No.
Right. Life is so full of distractions. And challenges.
It is.
And sometimes it's hard to stay connected. To that deeper sense of purpose.
It can be really challenging.
So what advice would you offer to someone who's struggling to stay grounded amidst, the chaos of daily life?
I think it's crucial to establish a regular practice of connecting with the divine.
So what does that look like practically?
Whether it's through prayer, meditation, spending time in nature, engaging in acts of service. It's essential to find those practices that nourish your soul and bring you back to a place of centeredness and clarity.
So it's about creating these moments of pause.
Yes.
These opportunities to reconnect with yourself and with your understanding of God.
Exactly.
And I think it's also important to surround yourself with a supportive community.
Absolutely.
People who share your values and inspire you to be your best self.
Yes, like-minded individuals who can support you on your journey.
Right, because we can't do it alone.
No, we can't.
And, chapter 51 also reminds us that God is constantly offering us these opportunities for forgiveness and growth.
We're not expected to be perfect.
Yeah.
We're expected to strive.
Right.
Learn from our mistakes.
Yeah.
Keep moving forward on the path of righteousness.
So it's about embracing the journey.
Yes.
With all of its ups and downs.
Exactly.
Knowing that we have this capacity to learn and grow along the way.
And that's what makes this chapter so inspiring.
Yeah.
It offers this vision of life filled with both challenge and possibility, a life where every moment is an opportunity to connect with the divine and contribute to a more just and compassionate world.
Wow, that was powerful.
It is a powerful chapter.
We've covered so much in our deep dive into chapter 51.
Yeah.
From the imagery of wind to this profound message of personal responsibility.
Yes.
The importance of cultivating our fitra.
Absolutely.
And this transformative power of understanding worship as a way of life.
It's been really enriching.
It has.
And I hope it inspires our listeners to reflect on their own lives and their choices and consider how they can embrace this profound wisdom and guidance that's offered in this chapter.
Well said. As we conclude our deep dive,
I
want to leave our listeners with one final question to ponder.
Okay.
How can the insights that we've explored today inspire you to live a more purposeful and meaningful life?
Yeah.
A life that's aligned with your fitra and dedicated to creating a more just and compassionate world.
That's the question we should all be asking ourselves.
Until next time, keep seeking knowledge
and keep diving deep.
See you next time.